Hello, Screamer, and welcome back to the channel. My name is James. If you have watched this channel at all or listened to the podcast, you know that I don't like doing negative reviews, but this one kind of hurt. I'm going to be reviewing Paranormal Activity Next of Kin. Now, if you watched the last video, you'll know that Paranormal Activity is like right up there in the top of my list of favorite found footage series of films. And I was really excited when I heard about Next of Kin. And it came out recently on Paramount Plus, and I thought, you know what, let me go ahead and watch it. Let's give it a shot and see what it's like. For a brief plot synopsis, a young woman is contacted after doing one of these genetic tests. I believe she said it was 23andMe, and she was contacted by someone in the Amish community. Turns out they were related, and she was given away at birth to a hospital, and she never really knew who her parents were or where she came from. So now she found out that she is Amish, and she goes to this Amish community to find out more about her family history. And so she decides that she wants to make a documentary about it. She hires two friends to do that, and they meet up with the relative who contacted her. He left the community, and he's living as an Englishman now, and they meet up and go and travel to the community to meet the family. So let's get right into the acting. Acting was really good. I was impressed. I don't recognize any of the names or the faces, but I think they all did a really, really good job. Very believable characters. Dan Lippert, who was kind of like the comic relief. Like, I genuinely laughed at the jokes that he made. He was a funny dude, very just a likable character, and Dan just did like a really good job with that. The production value on the film was, I think, a little too good. So the film is shot in CinemaScope, which is a really extra wide view. This is wider than 16:9. So you have the black bars at the top and bottom. This is mainly done for cinematic films done in third-person narratives, not documentaries. So that right there, I had a little bit of an issue with, but not too bad. But the production value did look, I mean, it looked too good for a documentary about somebody's family. And, you know, this is supposed to be like a low budget. They look like they were using like high-end cameras. So that's my first main gripe with the movie. The second issue I had with the film, and I've talked about this many times before when discussing found footage, everything happens in the last 30 minutes. Typically, even with like the rest of the Paranormal Activity films, I bought the 6-movie box set off of Amazon recently. It was like $13. I finished watching all of them yesterday. They all start with a little bit of activity, and it increases during the course of the film. Found footage here recently has gotten to where they hold off on pretty much everything into the last 30 minutes. The first hour is usually on storytelling, and it's kind of mostly it's dull and it's boring. It's just kind of, well, not boring. It's not as interesting as it should be. And I think that's a real shame. This one falls right into that same cliche. We had one, maybe two instances of paranormal activity, and that was really about it in the first hour of the film. And I was really sad to see that they held everything off to the last 30 minutes. The other major disappointment, this is what really just upset me, as a true genuine fan of this entire series. I loved all the films. The camera work was mostly good. They sell this as a found footage movie, and then in the last 20 minutes, there is about a 2-minute sequence where we just automatically flip into the third-person narrative. And it's like they completely forgot they were shooting found footage. You see over-the-shoulder shots from a camera when you're coming from the other perspective isn't even there. And then we see an overhead shot, and there's never any sort of indicator that cameras were set up around this building. And so it's almost like they forgot they were shooting found footage, or ghosts were using invisible cameras, which could be a new horror movie trope. Who knows? That really just, man, there's a couple things you could do just really blow a film, and this is one of them. When you set rules up for your movie and then you just completely disregard them because either you didn't know how to shoot the sequence with a single camera, or you didn't think beforehand how this was going to play out with one camera. Because throughout the film, this is my other issue, throughout the entire film, they use one camera is what they use, and a cell phone every now and then. The cameraman, Chris, brings all this extra gear. Like they make it appear that he has like all this equipment, and not once do we ever see him hooking up remote cameras. We never even see the film through those remote cameras. So it is left up for us to assume that he never even bothered to hook those up. They're using two cameras, primarily the main DSLR, and Margot uses her iPhone here and there. There is also one other scene in the film during the dinner. There's sort of like a dinner celebration where, this is the first time I noticed it, where there were shots that could have only been shot by a second cameraman who was not present when we see the film through Chris's camera as he's holding it. That to me is that's a really massive issue, and it's kind of hard to overlook that. I don't know, man. When I saw that at the end, I was just really disappointed how you just break your own rules. I know it's not really the writer's fault. It's the DP and the director. It is them. It's up to them to figure out how to pull this shot off or this sequence off using one camera, maybe the iPhone as well. And I guess they just couldn't figure that out because it completely broke the found footage genre and went into third person narrative for like 2 minutes, and that was it. It was really jarring. It didn't make sense, and it really just pulled me out of the experience. Like after that, like I was pretty much having a good time until that happened, and then I was just kind of like pulled out of the experience. So that bothered me a little bit. As for the overall story, the story I think was pretty cool. It was an interesting story. There was a neat little twist at the end. The overall buildup was okay. I just wish they had more activity from the get-go and just built up to that. And they didn't do a good job with that like the other films did. So let's get into a little bit of spoilers here. I'm going to throw up the spoiler graphic, and then when we're done talking with spoilers, I'll pull it down so you know if you haven't seen it, you'll know how far to skip ahead. So the only paranormal activity we see is Margot goes upstairs to the room where her mom had lived when her mom was part of the Amish community. And while Margot is there, she's kind of looking around. She hears noises. She finds like a secret little room with like some sort of weird demonic drawing on the wall. It looks like maybe it was drawn there with crayon, and then it kind of faded over time. Then she's looking out the window, and we see what is supposed to be her mother, like pop out through the window, and she turns around and is gone. So we know it's an apparition. And then she hears the old dude coming up I guess this would be her grandfather. We hear him coming up the stairs. So she hides under the bed. He sees something and leaves. And we see the bed as we're looking at Margot as she's under the bed. But we see the top of the bed start to sink as though someone were laying on it. She crawls out from under the bed. She looks at it. There's nothing there. And then it cuts away, and that was that. Later on in the film, we see that Margot's mom is actually this sort of creature tied up in a cave underneath the church that they found. How is she an apparition, a ghost, and a living creature at the same time? Makes zero sense. I didn't get it. We know this is Margot's mother because when she showed the reflection to Chris on the iPad, that's what her mom looked like when she was down in the cave. We don't really get any sort of explanation as to how her mom came that way. They don't really explain any of that. They should. I mean, look, I'm all for not giving a whole lot of exposition, but here we needed something, like anything, to kind of fill in the gaps of the story. There were also a few other things that didn't really get a whole lot of explanation that I think we should have gotten even just a little bit. Like I said, just to kind of fill in the holes and fill in the story gaps there, but we didn't quite get that. Overall, the film was okay. It just really disappoints me that they broke the found footage rule and just kind of went into the third person for no reason other than they couldn't figure out how to shoot that sequence with one camera. That just really bothers me. I expect a found footage movie, and it's not like Superhost, where you have like these YouTubers, and it starts off with like the perspective from the camera, and these people are shooting their YouTube video, and then it jumps to third person narrative for most of the film. They just kind of use the camera element to tell sort of like when they're making a YouTube video. That's something completely different. I've seen other films do that as well. Completely different. You sell this to me as a found footage movie from the get-go because, one, it's part of Paranormal Activity. And two, you're starting off with handheld camera work through the eyes of you know what I'm talking about. Through the majority of the film, and then all of a sudden you switch that. I don't know. It really bothered me. So should you watch this film? To be honest, taste is subjective. I thought it was okay. I could have done without watching it. Should you watch it? I mean, if you're a fan of the series, you're probably going to watch it anyway. I could also say don't get your hopes up, but again, like I said, I mean, it's subjective, depending on, whether you like it or not. So, I don't know, man. It doesn't get a solid recommendation for me. Like, I'm not going to tell you, ooh, you need to watch this film because it's so great. It's not that great. It's okay. And that's really about it. It's okay. Take it or leave it. There's my little rant on Paranormal Activity, Next of Kin. I can't believe I spent this time on one movie when I record a podcast. It usually takes me like 5-10 minutes. This one it really got on my skin. I guess because I just love the franchise so much, and I had really high hopes for this one. It just kind of let me down. So there you go. There is my review of Paranormal Activity, Next of Kin. I will say this. Also, there's a really good documentary on Paramount Plus called Unknown Dimensions, which is just a documentary, interviews with the filmmakers and some of the actors behind Paranormal Activity. Definitely recommend you check that out. That was a really good documentary. But that's going to do it for this video. If you'd like to see more of Scream Stream, or you'd like to take a listen to the podcast, just head over to screampod.com. You'll find all my links right there. You'll find the podcast episodes, link to subscribe to the podcast and all the major podcast apps. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you'd like to see more content like it, please consider subscribing. And until next time, I'm James saying, if it was real, the cameraman would be dead too. At least when they switch to third person narrative. Good night.